James Miller stood in line at the integration center, trying to hide his discomfort. The year was 2157, and humanity had emerged victorious from a brutal war with the Stellar Empire just 6 months ago. Now, the government was pushing a controversial program to rehabilitate and integrate former Empire citizens into human society. He hadn't volunteered for this. As one of Earth's leading xenobiologists, the government had strongly encouraged him to participate in the program. They needed people with scientific backgrounds to help former Empire researchers adjust to working under human oversight. The line moved forward slowly. Through the glass walls, James could see other humans meeting their new wards. Some of the aliens looked defeated, others defiant. All of them wore simple gray jumpsuits with tracking bracelets on their wrists. Number 2184. A tired voice called out. James checked his paper. That was him. The processing room was cold and sterile. Behind a desk sat a bored-looking government official who barely looked up from his computer screen. Dr. Miller, you've been assigned Ward 7249. Her name is Lyra. She was a biological weapons researcher for the Empire. James felt his stomach tighten. Biological weapons? That wasn't what he had expected. I work on medical research, he protested. Surely there's someone more appropriate. She has extensive knowledge of xenobiology. The official cut him off. That's what we need. Sign here. As James signed the papers, a side door opened. 2 guards led in a tall, slender alien woman. Her skin was a pale shade of blue, and her silver hair was cut short in what James recognized as the Empire's scientific case style. Her face was completely expressionless, but her large, dark eyes studied him intensely. The official droned through the rules. James would be responsible for Lyra's housing, employment, and integration into human society. She would work as his research assistant. The tracking bracelet would monitor her movements. Any attempt to escape would result in immediate imprisonment. Do you understand your obligations? The official asked them both. Yes, James said quietly. I understand, human. Lyra spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft, but carried a hint of something. Pride, perhaps, or bitterness. The drive home was awkward. James lived in a modest apartment near his research facility in New Seattle. He had cleared out his home office to serve as Lyra's room, but now he wondered if he should have done more to prepare. Your living space will be through here, he said, showing her the room. There's a bed, dresser, and private bathroom. I stocked some basic supplies, but let me know if you need anything else. Lyra stood in the doorway, her posture rigid. This is adequate, she said carefully. When do we begin work? Tomorrow. Tonight you should rest and... I prefer to begin immediately, she interrupted. I assume you have research facilities. James studied her face. Was this eagerness to work, or just a desire to avoid dealing with their uncomfortable living situation? The lab can wait until tomorrow, he said firmly. You need time to adjust. For a moment, something flickered in Lyra's eyes. Frustration, perhaps. But her voice remained neutral. As you wish, Master. The word made James wince. Please don't call me that. My name is James, or Dr. Miller if you prefer. Protocol requires. Protocol can wait, he said. You're not a slave, Lyra. You're here to be rehabilitated and integrated into our society. That means learning to interact as equals. Lyra's expression didn't change, but her shoulders tensed slightly. Your species conquered mine, human. Do not pretend this is anything else. We defended ourselves, James corrected quietly. And now we're trying to build something better than conquest. But it only works if both sides are willing to try. She said nothing, but he could feel her studying him, trying to understand his angle, looking for the trap or lie in his words. Finally, she gave a slight nod. I will rest now, Dr. Miller. It wasn't much, James thought as he left her to settle in. But it was a start. The laboratory hummed with quiet energy as James watched Lyra work. 3 weeks had passed since she arrived, And he had to admit, she was brilliant. Her long blue fingers moved with practiced ease across the holographic displays, adjusting complex molecular structures with perfect precision. "The human immune system is fascinating," she said without looking up. "So adaptable, yet so vulnerable in specific ways." James noticed she had stopped saying "your species" and switched to "human." A small but meaningful change. He moved closer to examine her work. "What have you found?" "This protein structure," she pointed to a rotating model. "In empire biology, it doesn't exist. But in humans, it helps fight diseases. If we could understand it better." She stopped suddenly, her shoulders tensing. James understood her hesitation. Her weapons research past made her careful about showing too much interest in human biology. "Go on," he encouraged. "This could help develop better medicines." Lyra turned to look at him, her dark eyes searching his face. "You trust me with this information? After knowing what I did for the Empire?" "I trust you to make better choices now," he said simply. She turned back to her work, but James noticed her hands trembling slightly. Later that day in the break room, James brought 2 cups of coffee. He had learned that Lyra enjoyed the bitter drink, though she tried to hide it. As he set 1 cup beside her, she looked up in surprise. "Thank you," she said quietly. Then, after a pause, "May I ask you something, Dr. Miller?" "Of course. Why do humans do this? The Empire conquered 12 species before yours. We enslaved them, used them. But you?" She gestured at the coffee, at the lab, at her comfortable clothes that had replaced the gray jumpsuit. "You treat us like this. Why?" James considered his answer carefully. "Because that's not who we are. We fought because we had to, not because we wanted to conquer. And now we have a choice about what happens next." "The Empire would say this makes you weak," Lyra said, but her tone held no conviction. "Is that what you think?" She stared into her coffee cup. "I don't know what to think anymore. The Empire taught us that strength meant control. Power meant dominance. But here," she looked around the lab, "you gave me access to advanced equipment. Trust me with research. Treat me with respect." The last word came out almost confused. "Is that so strange?" "Yes," she said firmly. Then, softer, "But I think I prefer it." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Peters, another researcher. James saw how Lyra immediately stiffened, her face becoming the blank mask she had worn on their first day. Peters barely acknowledged her presence, speaking only to James about some paperwork. After he left, James noticed Lyra's hands clenched tightly around her cup. "Does it bother you?" he asked. "How some people treat you?" "No," she said quickly. Then, "Yes, but not for the reason you think. It bothers me because they act how I expected all humans to act. How I would have acted before." She met his eyes. "It bothers me because it reminds me of who I was." James felt something shift in their dynamic. This was the most personal thing she had ever said to him. "People can change. Lyra, can they?" She stood up, suddenly businesslike again. "The protein analysis should be complete. Shall we continue?" James nodded, recognizing she needed the conversation to end. But as they walked back to their workstation, he noticed she walked beside him now, not 3 steps behind as she had done in the first weeks. Progress, he thought, comes in small steps. Like a protein adapting to better fight disease, people could adapt too. Learning, growing, changing. Even someone from a culture as rigid as the Empire could learn to see things differently. He just hoped the rest of humanity was ready to adapt as well. 2 months into their work together, James noticed that Lyra had started humming while she worked. It was a strange, melodic sound that filled the quiet lab. When she caught him listening, she stopped immediately. "I apologize," she said, her blue skin darkening slightly, and what he had learned was embarrassment. "It was a habit from my old laboratory in the Empire." "No, please continue," James said. "What was the song about?" Lyra hesitated, then spoke softly. It's an old Empire song about the stars, about how they guide us home. A pause. I haven't thought about home in a long time. James pulled up a chair. Their research could wait. Tell me about your life before, if you want to. She was quiet for so long that he thought she wouldn't answer. But then she began to speak, her voice distant. I was born into the scientific caste. From childhood, we were taught that knowledge was power, and power served the empire. I loved biology, studying life in all its forms, but they took that love and twisted it. How? James asked gently. They said our research would protect our people, that the weapons we developed were for defense. Her hands clenched. I believed them, until I saw what my work did to the first test subjects. But by then, refusing meant death. James wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but maintained his distance. You're not that person anymore. No, she agreed. Now I help create cures instead of weapons. It feels right. She looked at him curiously. In your culture, how do you choose your path? Your work? James smiled. We follow our interests, our passions. No castes, no assigned roles. Just choice. Choice. Lyra repeated the word like it was foreign. That's why human science progresses so quickly. Passion drives innovation better than fear. Their conversation was interrupted by James's stomach growling. He checked the time. They had worked through lunch again. I could cook dinner, Lyra offered suddenly. When James looked surprised, she added, I've been studying human cooking videos. Your food is interesting. That evening, in James's kitchen, Lyra prepared something that looked like pasta but had a distinctly blue tint. It's a fusion, she explained. Empire spices with human pasta. I had to substitute some ingredients. James took a bite. The flavors were strange but delightful, warm and spicy, with an underlying sweetness. This is amazing. In the Empire, sharing food was intimate, reserved for family or... She trailed off, that dark blue blush returning to her cheeks. I should not have presumed. I'm honored, James said quickly. And I'd like to learn more about your culture. The real culture, not just what the Empire wanted everyone to see. Lyra's expression softened. There was beauty once, before the military caste took control. We had art, music, dance. Did you know our scientists used to write poems about their discoveries? As they ate, Lyra told him about empire festivals of light, about music that used mathematics to create perfect harmonies, about gardens that floated in anti-gravity fields. James shared stories about Earth's cultures, about human celebrations and traditions. Your species is so diverse, Lyra marveled. So many different ways of living, yet you stay united. Not always, James admitted. We've had our own wars, our own dark times, but we learned to celebrate our differences instead of fearing them. Later, as Lyra cleaned up, refusing James's help, insisting it was her way of showing gratitude, she began humming again. This time, she didn't stop when James noticed. That's a different song, he observed. Yes, she said, not meeting his eyes. This one is about new beginnings. James smiled, understanding the meaning behind her words. Sometimes, he realized, the biggest cultural exchanges happen not in grand gestures, but in small moments like this. Shared meals, quiet songs, and honest conversations. And perhaps that was exactly how it should be. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday morning. Lyra burst into James's office, her dark eyes wide with excitement. We did it. She held up a tablet showing test results. The hybrid protein structure. It works. It can adapt to both human and empire biology. James studied the data, his excitement growing. Their months of research had finally paid off. They had created a new medical treatment that could work on both species. This is incredible, Lyra. We need to report this to the board immediately. But their success brought unexpected problems. The next day, the laboratory filled with government officials and military personnel. James watched helplessly as they questioned Lyra separately, their tone suspicious and harsh. "How did you gain access to such detailed human biological data?" one official demanded. "Who authorized this level of research?" "I did." James stepped in, seeing Lyra's distress. "She's my research partner." "Partner?" The official's voice dripped with disbelief. "She's a ward, Dr. Miller. A former enemy scientist. Have you forgotten what her people did?" Before James could respond, Dr. Peters spoke up from the crowd that had gathered. "I've been saying this for months. It's dangerous, letting them work with our medical research. She probably has some hidden agenda." Lyra stood perfectly still, her face a mask, but James saw her hands trembling. He had learned to read her subtle expressions over the months. She was struggling to maintain her composure. "The results speak for themselves," James argued. "This treatment could help thousands of people, both human and Empire citizens. Isn't that what this integration program is about?" Later that evening, after everyone had left, James found Lyra in the lab, staring at her research station. The tracking bracelet on her wrist blinked steadily in the dim light. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what?" Her voice was flat. "For treating me like a person. For believing I could be more than my past." She turned to face him, and he was shocked to see moisture in her eyes. Empire people rarely showed such emotion. "Do you know what hurts the most? They're right not to trust me. I did terrible things during the war." That was then. "No," she cut him off. "Let me finish. I did terrible things, but you humans showed me a different way. You showed me that strength can mean healing instead of hurting. That power can be used to help." Her voice broke slightly. "You made me want to be better." James moved closer, wanting to comfort her but unsure how. "The board will see the value of our work. They can't ignore." "They already have," Lyra said quietly. "I heard them talking. They're going to reassign me to a different facility, one with proper security protocols." "They can't do that. I'll fight this." "Why?" She turned to him suddenly, her eyes intense. "Why do you keep defending me? It would be easier for you to just let me go." James met her gaze steadily. "Because you're not just my ward or my research partner. You're my friend, and I don't abandon my friends." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she turned away quickly, busying herself with organizing lab equipment that was already perfectly arranged. "The Empire never understood friendship," she said softly. "We understood ownership, allegiance, duty. But this," she gestured vaguely between them, "this is different, and it scares them. Perhaps it should scare me too." "Does it?" James asked. Lyra's hand stilled on the equipment. "No," she whispered, "and that scares me even more." The tracking bracelet blinked steadily in the darkness, a constant reminder of who and what they were supposed to be. But as they stood there in the quiet lab, surrounded by their shared work, those roles seemed to matter less and less. The crisis wasn't just about their research anymore. It was about something much more complicated and much more dangerous. The night before Lyra's scheduled transfer, James stayed late at the lab, trying to find any legal way to stop it. Rain pattered against the windows, matching his gloomy mood. The building was empty except for them. Lyra worked silently at her station, documenting all their research. Her movements were mechanical, like she was trying to disconnect from what tomorrow would bring. The silver lights of the lab made her blue skin look almost ethereal. "Maybe if we appeal to the medical board directly," James said, breaking the heavy silence. "The potential benefits of our research." "Please stop," Lyra said quietly. She hadn't turned around. "You can't fix this. I'm not giving up." "Why?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Why do you care so much? I told you yesterday. You're my friend." Lyra's hand stilled on the keyboard. "Is that all?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. James felt his heart rate increase. "What do you mean?" Finally, she turned to face him. Her dark eyes were filled with an emotion he'd never seen before. "In the Empire, We were taught to suppress emotions, to see them as weakness. But humans. She took a shaky breath. Humans embrace them. You taught me that feeling deeply isn't weakness. It's strength. James stayed very still, sensing she needed to continue. At first I thought you were naive, she went on. Your kindness, your trust. In the Empire, these would be exploited. But then I saw how that kindness changed people, changed me. She looked down at her hands. I began to feel things I wasn't supposed to feel. Lyra. Please, she held up a hand. Let me finish. Tomorrow they'll take me away. And I'll never forgive myself if I don't say this. She stood up straighter, seeming to gather all her courage. I love you, James Miller. The confession echoed in the quiet lab. James felt his world shift slightly on its axis. Not just as a friend, she continued, her voice trembling but determined. Not just as a mentor or a kind human who helped me. I love your brilliant mind, your gentle heart, your unwavering belief that people can be better than their past. She turned away quickly, her shoulders tense. I know it's wrong. I'm your ward, a former enemy. I shouldn't feel this way. But humans. She gave a small, broken laugh. Humans taught me that the heart doesn't follow rules or protocols. James took a step toward her, but she held up her hand again. Don't, she whispered. Don't be kind about this. I couldn't bear it. I just needed you to know, before they send me away, that one Empire citizen learned to love instead of hate. That your way, the human way. It works. It changes people. It changed me. A tear, something James had never seen from her before, rolled down her cheek, catching the silver lab lights like a star. You showed me what real strength is, she continued softly. Not domination or control, but compassion. The strength to be vulnerable, to care, to love even when it hurts. She touched her tracking bracelet absently, even when it's impossible. James felt his own eyes growing damp. He wanted to tell her that it wasn't impossible, that he'd been fighting his own growing feelings for weeks. But the words stuck in his throat. She was right. There were rules, protocols, ethical considerations. I'm sorry, Lyra said into the silence. I've made things harder for you. Another reason, their right to transfer me. She turned back to her workstation, her movements once again mechanical. We should finish documenting the research. But as she reached for the keyboard, her hand was shaking too badly to type. Without thinking, James stepped forward and covered her hand with his own. The touch was electric. Lyra froze, not breathing. We'll find a way, he said softly. I promise. She didn't respond, but her fingers intertwined with his, and in that simple touch was every word they couldn't say. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the old world, and perhaps, just perhaps, clearing the way for something new. The morning after Lyra's confession, James paced in front of the integration program board. 5 stern faces watched him from behind a long desk. Lyra sat quietly in a chair behind him, her face carefully blank. Dr. Miller, the head of the board, Dr. Thompson, spoke first. You're requesting to halt the transfer of Ward 7249. On what grounds? Her name is Lyra, James said firmly. And our research is groundbreaking. This medical breakthrough could save countless lives, both human and Empire. That's not the issue here, another board member cut in. We've received reports about inappropriate attachments forming. James felt his face grow warm but stood his ground. If by inappropriate attachments you mean treating someone with respect and dignity, then yes, I'm guilty. Dr. Thompson leaned forward. Dr. Miller, she was a weapons researcher for the Empire. Have you forgotten what their bioweapons did to our colonies? No. A quiet voice spoke from behind James. Everyone turned to look at Lyra as she stood. No one should forget what the Empire did. Especially not me. I live with that guilt every day. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. But humans taught me something remarkable. You taught me that guilt can drive change. That the past can be a lesson, not just a burden. She looked at each board member in turn. You want to know if I can be trusted. Look at our research. Every day, I choose to heal instead of harm. Every discovery we make helps both our peoples. Pretty words, one board member sneered. But how do we know this isn't some elaborate empire plot? James started to protest, but Lyra spoke first. Because I love him. The room fell silent. James's heart pounded in his chest. Yes, I love him, Lyra continued, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. The Empire would consider this the ultimate betrayal. Loving one's enemy. Impossible. But humans showed me that love isn't weakness. It's the strongest force for change in the universe. Dr. Thompson's face darkened. This is exactly why we're transferring you. Dr. Miller, your judgment has been compromised by... By what? James interrupted. By seeing her as a person instead of a prisoner. By recognizing that change is possible. He took a deep breath. You created this integration program to prove that our species could coexist. To show that humanity's way was better than the Empire's. But if we treat them with suspicion and control, how are we any different? The power dynamics, another board member began, are complicated. James finished. We know that. We've struggled with it. But Lyra isn't just a ward anymore. She's a brilliant scientist who chooses every day to use her knowledge for good. Doesn't that deserve recognition? Dr. Thompson studied them both for a long moment. And what exactly are you proposing, Dr. Miller? Review our research. Look at what we've accomplished together. Then review Lyra's status in the program. She's earned the right to be treated as a colleague, not a prisoner. And your personal feelings. James glanced at Lyra, saw the mix of fear and hope in her eyes. Our personal feelings are our own, but they haven't compromised our work. They've enhanced it. Love makes us better scientists, better people. The board members exchanged looks. Finally, Dr. Thompson spoke. We will need time to review this situation. Until then, the transfer is suspended. But she fixed them both with a stern look. You will be under increased supervision. As they left the boardroom, Lyra's hand brushed against James's, not quite holding, but close enough to feel the warmth. Thank you, she whispered, for fighting for me. For us, he corrected softly. I'm fighting for us. They walked back to their lab, where their research waited. Nothing was resolved yet. The board might still separate them. The world might still judge them. But for now, they had this moment, and the hope that love really could change the universe, one small step at a time. 3 months had passed since the board hearing. The laboratory glowed with early morning light as James and Lyra stood before a wall of screens, presenting their research results to a global medical conference. As you can see, Lyra explained, her confident voice carrying through the video feed, the hybrid treatment has shown a 94% success rate in clinical trials. It works equally well for both human and empire physiologies. James watched with pride as she handled questions from doctors around the world. Her tracking bracelet was gone now, replaced by a simple silver ID badge that matched his own. The board's final decision had come 2 weeks ago, after their research had saved lives in both human and empire hospitals. After the presentation, as they were shutting down the lab for the day, Dr. Thompson appeared in the doorway. Excellent work, both of you, she said, her formerly stern face now showing genuine respect. The integration board has reviewed your case again. We've decided to use it as a model for reforming the entire program. Lyra's dark eyes widened. What do you mean? Your success proves that true integration requires trust and equal treatment. Dr. Thompson handed them both official papers. As of today, Lyra, you're granted full citizenship rights, and your research facility will become the first joint human-empire medical center. James read the papers, his heart racing. You're making us co-directors. Who better? Dr. Thompson smiled slightly. You've proven that our species can do more than just coexist. We can thrive together. She paused at the door. Oh, and the ethics board has also removed all restrictions on personal relationships between program participants and their former guardians. Just thought you should know. After she left, James and Lyra stood in stunned silence. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice soft with wonder. "Free," she whispered. "Truly free." James turned to her. Under the lab lights, her blue skin seemed to glow with happiness. "How does it feel?" "Strange," she admitted. "Wonderful. Scary." She looked at him shyly. "What happens now?" Instead of answering, James walked to his desk and pulled out a small box he'd been keeping there, waiting for this day. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like a double helix, half human DNA, half empire. "Now," he said, holding it out to her, "we write our own story. Not as ward and guardian, not as human and empire, but just as us. If that's what you want." Lyra took the pendant, tears shining in her eyes. "The empire taught us that love was weakness," she said softly. "That feelings made us vulnerable." She looked up at him. "But they were wrong. Love gave me strength to change, to heal instead of hurt, to believe in something better." She stepped closer to him. "I love you, James Miller, not because you saved me, but because you showed me how to save myself." James gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "I love you too, Lyra, not despite our differences, but because of them. Because you chose to change, to grow, to trust." Their first kiss was soft and gentle, like a new star being born from the darkness of space. Later that evening, they stood on the roof of the research center, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Other research teams would be arriving soon, humans and Empire citizens working together as equals, following the path they had helped create. "Do you think it will work?" Lyra asked, her hand warm in his. "This new program." James squeezed her hand gently. "Look how far we've come already. From enemies to colleagues to this." He smiled. "Love is the ultimate experiment, you know. It changes everything it touches." Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder, humming that old Empire song about stars guiding the way home. But now it wasn't about longing for a lost empire. It was about finding a new home, a new way forward, together. Above them, the first stars began to appear, witnessing this small but profound victory, not of one species over another, but of love over fear, of hope over hatred, of a future built on understanding instead of power. And in that moment, both human and alien knew that this was just the beginning of their greatest discovery yet.